So picture this. You're sitting in the passenger seat of this classic, just beautifully restored luxury car.
Oh, yeah. The leather is warm. The dashboard has that soft analog glow to it.
Exactly. And as you reach out to tune the radio dial, the static sort of clears into a crisp, late-night broadcast.
Just the perfect vibe.
Right. You can just sit back, watch the world roll by, and let us take the wheel. So settle in, because tonight's drive is taking us straight into the hidden fragility of Earth's massive ecosystems.
It's going to be quite the ride.
Yeah, I'll be your co-pilot as we kick off part 2 of our deep dive into modern human history.
And it is a truly fascinating road ahead.
Yeah.
Just a quick note, though, before we really accelerate. The deep dive you're riding along with today is a bit unique.
Right, we should mention that up front.
Yeah. We are AI hosts, and we're actually translating and adapting this original, highly detailed Tamil content created by Dr. Ramesh.
From the YouTube channel AIML Astrology, right?
Exactly. We're adapting it into English.
And this is a completely not-for-profit educational effort. We're sharing this purely out of love and honestly immense respect for the original creator.
The staggering amount of research Dr. Ramesh put into mapping out these global mechanisms, I mean, it just deserves to be heard by as many people as possible.
100%. So our mission on this drive is to explore the massive engines controlling our global weather, confront humanity's existential impact on the globe, and really break down the fundamental mechanics of how species actually change over time.
Which is a lot to cover. But to truly understand modern human history, we have to start by looking closely at the physical stage we occupy, you know?
Right.
We need to examine the architecture of the planet that makes our existence possible in the first place.
And there is literally no piece of architecture more monumental than the Earth's most famous lung, the Amazon rainforest.
Oh, absolutely.
Translating Dr. Ramesh's findings, the sheer staggering scale of this biome just comes into incredibly sharp focus.
It really does.
We're talking about a forest that is, what, 1.7 times the size of India?
Yeah, roughly. It's a landmass so impossibly large that it essentially dictates its own weather patterns. The numbers are almost difficult for the human mind to process.
Because it houses an estimated 390 billion individual trees.
Billion, with a B.
Right. But the scale isn't just terrestrial, it's hydrological, too. Look at the Amazon River itself.
The water displacement there is, well, it's just massive.
It's insane. Where the river meets the sea, the sheer force and volume of the current push fresh water like 160 kilometers out into the open ocean.
Wow.
It physically forces the salt water of the Atlantic out of the way, creating this massive freshwater plume that you can actually see from space.
It is a phenomenal display of raw ecological power.
Truly.
But the central insight we need to pull from this, and this is really the paradox of the Amazon, is that this immense scale creates a totally dangerous illusion of invincibility.
Right, because when you see 390 billion towering trees, your intuition just tells you, oh, they must be anchored deep into the bedrock.
Naturally, you assume a forest that massive requires a foundation that goes down for miles.
Exactly, but the reality of the Amazon is the exact opposite, isn't it?
It is. Despite its towering canopy, the Amazon fundamentally lacks deep soil.
Which is wild to think about.
Yeah. The soil that does exist is incredibly shallow and surprisingly nutrient poor.
So, okay, how does a biome of that magnitude sustain itself then? I mean, if the ground is poor, where are the trees getting the fuel to grow hundreds of feet tall?
Well, they get it from each other.
Really?
Yeah, and they do it entirely on the surface. Because the heavy, constant rains of the region quickly wash away any soluble nutrients, the trees literally cannot afford to let those nutrients sink into the deep earth.
Oh, I see.
So to survive, they don't drive taproots deep down. Instead, their roots spread outward horizontally, massively entangling with one another.
Oh, like a net.
Exactly. They share that incredibly shallow top layer to physically support each other and rapidly swamp what little biological material decays on the forest floor.
So it's not a collection of independent pillars driven deep into the ground. It is more like an unimaginably vast, tightly woven living carpet.
Yes. That's a great way to put it.
Or think of a massive, intricate, interlocking puzzle resting on a completely bare floor.
Right, right.
The structural integrity of the forest doesn't come from how deep the pieces go. The strength relies entirely on lateral codependence. They hold each other up.
That is the perfect way to visualize the mechanics of it. The entire forest is just a single, interdependent web resting on a highly fragile surface.
Which brings up a glaring, tragic contradiction, if you ask me.
Oh, for sure.
If the soil is basically just a thin, nutrient-poor veneer supported entirely by this living root carpet, why do human beings continue to burn down millions of acres of it to create agricultural land?
It's a great question.
We see the satellite images of the slash and burn fires every single year. If the underlying dirt is useless, what is the economic logic there?
Well, the logic is fundamentally flawed, and that is the real tragedy of the Amazon. Clearing the forest for farming or cattle ranching is ultimately just a futile endeavor.
Because there's nothing underneath.
Exactly. When you burn the trees, you completely incinerate that tightly woven living carpet of roots we just talked about.
Oh, right.
Without that biological net to hold the moisture and catch the decaying matter, the ecosystem collapses instantly.
The structural integrity is just gone.
Precisely. The heavy rains come, and without the roots, whatever temporary nutrients the ash provided are immediately washed away.
Wow.
The exposed soil just bakes in the sun and becomes totally barren almost overnight.
So we are burning down a millions of years old biological masterpiece just to extract, what, maybe 2 or 3 years of mediocre crop yields?
Pretty much.
Before the land turns into useless, hardened dust.
Yeah. It is the permanent destruction of a global support system for a microscopic, short-term gain.
That's horrifying. And the destruction of the Amazon doesn't happen in a vacuum either. Burning hundreds of millions of trees releases thousands of years of stored carbon straight into the atmosphere.
Which is heating the entire planet.
Exactly. Which brings us perfectly to the next critical mechanism we really need to understand on this drive.
Yes, because that planetary heating directly impacts the Earth's other massive temperature regulator, the Pacific Ocean.
Right. If the Amazon is the lung, the ocean is the global thermostat.
Such a good analogy. And to understand that thermostat, we have to look at 2 phenomena that dictate the weather for billions of people: El Niño and La Niña.
We hear these terms constantly in weather reports, but Dr. Ramesh's research really breaks down the physical mechanics of how they actually operate.
It does. And it all starts with the trade winds.
Okay, lay it out for us.
So under normal baseline conditions, the trade winds blow steadily westward across the Pacific Ocean, physically pushing warm surface water toward Asia and Australia.
But during an El Niño event, that system sort of stutters, right?
Exactly. Those westward trade winds weaken. And without that wind constantly pushing the surface water toward Asia, all that accumulated warm water sloshes back east.
Rushing toward the western coast of the Americas.
Right. And the consequences of that warm water sloshing eastward are profound.
I can imagine.
From a meteorological standpoint, it totally alters global precipitation. It brings unusually wet conditions and severe flooding to places like the southern United States.
While leaving northern regions abnormally warm and dry.
Exactly. But the mechanical impact on the ocean itself is even more severe.
Because it acts like a thermal lid on the marine ecosystem.
Yes. Let's look at why that matters. Normally, off the coast of South America, you have a process called upwelling. Cold water from the deep ocean rises to the surface.
And this cold water is incredibly important, isn't it?
Vital. Because it carries decayed organic matter and nutrients from the ocean floor up into the sunlit zones where plankton can photosynthesize and thrive.
And that plankton feeds the small fish, which feed the larger fish, basically supporting massive marine economies.
Exactly. But when El Niño happens, that massive, thick blanket of warm water slides over the eastern Pacific. It basically traps the cold, nutrient-rich water down below.
Oh, wow.
The upwelling stops, the plankton die off, and the entire marine food web is starved.
That is wild. That is the physical mechanism of El Niño. And La Niña is what? The pendulum swinging to the opposite extreme?
Basically, yeah. During La Niña, those trade winds don't just return to normal, they go into overdrive.
Oh, boy.
They push the warm water so aggressively toward Asia that it causes extreme cold water upwelling in the eastern Pacific.
Which is an overcorrection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this overcorrection causes massive droughts in the southern U.S. and severe cold and wet conditions further north.
So we have this massive pendulum swinging back and forth, just dragging the world's weather with it.
Yeah, that's a good way to picture it.
But Dr. Ramesh's analysis points to 2023 as a terrifying watershed moment regarding this pendulum.
Yes. 2023 was the year that the standard climate forecasting models essentially broke down.
Like they just stopped working.
The predictive math literally stopped working.
The data went entirely off the charts. It became the hottest year on record for both land and oceans. We saw places like Antarctica experiencing a 40-year continuous warming trend.
With sea ice vanishing at rates that totally shocked oceanographers.
Which really requires us to make a crucial distinction about how this thermostat functions today versus historically, right?
Definitely.
Because logic dictates a question here. We know El Niño and La Niña are historical, natural phenomena. They've been happening for millennia.
Right.
So are we just experiencing a particularly strong natural cycle, or has humanity actually physically broken the global thermostat?
Well, the cycles themselves, the weakening and strengthening of the trade winds, are natural.
Okay.
But humanity has fundamentally altered the environment in which those cycles operate. The overall baseline temperature of the Earth's oceans is rising at an unprecedented rate due to carbon emissions.
So to use the pendulum analogy again, the pendulum is still swinging back and forth naturally.
But the room the pendulum is swinging inside is catching fire.
Oh, that's a terrifying image.
It is. Because the baseline ocean temperature is so much hotter now than it was a century ago, the water holds significantly more thermal energy.
Makes sense.
When the pendulum swings into an El Niño or La Niña today, that excess energy makes the impacts incredibly extreme, volatile, and entirely unpredictable.
So the natural thermostat isn't necessarily broken, it is just being forced to operate at a boiling baseline temperature it was never designed to handle.
Exactly.
Man, when you look at the mechanics of this, a highly fragile, interdependent rainforest being systematically burned to dust, and a global ocean thermostat overloaded with thermal energy, it really paints a grim picture.
It does. And to understand the root cause of this planetary stress, we really have to look in the mirror.
Right.
And this is where Dr. Ramesh introduces a remarkably powerful biological framework for understanding our current era. He posits that modern humanity is currently acting as the Earth's autoimmune disorder.
Wow. That is a heavy, sobering diagnosis.
It really is.
Earth autoimmune disorder. But, when you unpack the biology of it, it makes total sense.
Also,
Well, an autoimmune disorder occurs when an organism's own internal systems, the very cells meant to protect and sustain the body, lose the ability to recognize healthy tissue.
right, the white blood cells get confused and begin actively attacking the host organism.
Exactly. We are the white blood cells in this scenario. We are born of the earth. We are a product of its biological history, but our modern industrial systems have turned us into a rogue element.
Actively destroying the very respiratory and circulatory systems, the forests and the oceans, that keep the host alive.
And the metric that perfectly illustrates this divergence from the natural order is our relationship with waste.
Specifically through modern overconsumption and the economic model of planned obsolescence.
Ugh, planned obsolescence, the intentional engineering of products to break down or become obsolete quickly, forcing the consumer to buy the next version.
It's rampant. We extract geologic capital minerals and resources that took the Earth billions of years to form.
Right.
We refine them into highly complex gadgets like smartphones. And then we discard them the exact second a new model is released.
It's crazy.
We throw away appliances that could easily be repaired simply because our economic structure makes it cheaper to manufacture a new one than to fix the old one.
The sheer volume of this extraction and disposal is terrifying. I mean, we have generated more physical trash in just the last 200 years of industrialization than in the entire previous history of the Earth combined.
Which is just staggering to think about.
200 years is a rounding error in geologic time. It is a fraction of a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
And in that time, we have buried the planet in synthetic garbage. We've become the only species that knowingly degrades its own habitat for short-term convenience.
It's a harsh truth.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second, because nature is full of organisms that alter their environments.
Okay, I'm listening.
Isn't adapting to and exploiting our surroundings exactly what successful species are supposed to do? Look at beavers, for example.
Right, the classic ecosystem engineers.
Yeah. They dam up rivers, they flood massive tracts of forest, they knock down ancient trees just to build their homes. Aren't human beings essentially just doing what beavers do, just on a much more complex industrialized scale?
It is a really vital question, but looking closely at the beaver actually highlights exactly why human activity is an autoimmune response rather than natural adaptation.
Okay, how so?
When a beaver dams a river and floods a forest, it acts as an ecosystem engineer.
Yeah.
That flooded area becomes a new wetland.
Which provides a habitat for completely different organisms, I guess.
Exactly. It invites waterfowl, amphibians, and new plant life. The beaver operates within the limits of ecological succession and carrying capacity.
Oh, I see.
Eventually, the system reaches a dynamic equilibrium. The disturbance caused by the beaver ultimately increases the regional biodiversity.
A natural give and take.
Exactly. But human industrial extraction operates on an entirely different paradigm. Our endless economic expansion and rapid consumption are terminal disturbances.
We don't reach an equilibrium.
No, we pave over the wetlands entirely. We extract resources and generate toxic waste at a velocity that is profoundly out of sync with natural timeframes.
Right.
The Earth takes millions of years to sequester carbon or build deep soil, and we incinerate it in a single human lifetime.
Yeah.
An autoimmune disorder doesn't negotiate a balance with the host. It relentlessly consumes healthy tissue until the host collapses.
So if our current industrial iteration is acting as a rogue element destroying its host, it begs the question, how does nature usually integrate a species so perfectly into an ecosystem?
Right, because the beaver operates within a system of biological checks and balances.
Exactly. So to understand why we are breaking the rules and whether we even have the capacity to change our destructive path, we first have to understand the fundamental mechanics of how nature writes those rules in the first place.
Which requires us to zoom all the way out and look at the core mechanics of life on Earth.
Let's do it.
How does a species actually emerge and change?
Well, it certainly isn't a sudden magical transformation overnight, right?
Not at all. Speciation is a process of agonizingly slow, incremental changes over vast stretches of time, driven by natural selection.
Right.
It is the story of populations adapting to the highly specific pressures of their immediate environment. The individuals with favorable traits survive to pass those physical traits onto the next generation.
And when mapping out this process, a massive catalyst for creating an entirely new species is geographic isolation.
Physical separation is the great engine of divergence. Imagine a single unified population of animals living in a massive valley.
Okay, picturing it.
Now imagine a geological event over millennia. A river severely changes course, or a new mountain range slowly pushes upward, completely splitting that valley and that population in two.
So now you have Group A on the north side of the mountain and Group B on the south side. They are totally cut off from one another.
And crucially, the environments on either side of that physical barrier are going to exert entirely different pressures.
Oh, absolutely.
Group A might find themselves in a climate that is slowly cooling, favoring traits like thicker fur or a larger body mass to retain heat.
While Group B might be in a region getting hotter and drier, heavily favoring individuals with leaner builds who require less water.
Exactly. Because they are separated by the mountain, they are no longer mixing their traits. The two groups are adapting along completely independent pathways.
Generation after generation, the tiny physical variations accumulate.
Precisely. Eventually, after a massive amount of time has passed, if you were to somehow transport Group A over the mountain and put them back together with Group B, their physical and behavioral traits would be so radically different that they could no longer successfully produce viable offspring with one another.
And that is the biological threshold. The moment they can no longer reproduce together, a new species has officially emerged from the original lineage.
That inability to produce viable offspring is the defining boundary line of speciation.
Which brings us, inevitably, to perhaps the greatest, oldest biological puzzle of all time.
Ah, here we go.
We could not do a deep dive on the origins of species without tackling this head-on. It's a riddle that has frustrated philosophers for centuries.
But Dr. Ramesh's breakdown provides the definitive, mechanical answer based on these exact rules of speciation.
The classic paradox.
Yep.
Which came first? The chicken or the egg?
From a purely biological standpoint, following the mechanics of natural selection we just discussed, the answer is absolute. The egg came first.
The egg. Okay, we need to walk through the mechanics of this because anyone listening right now is likely shouting at their dashboard.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
How can the egg logically exist before the chicken is there to lay it?
It all comes back to that concept of the biological threshold.
Yeah.
And slow, tiny variations over time. Let's trace the lineage backward.
Okay.
The specific egg that eventually hatched the very first true chicken on Earth was not actually laid by a chicken.
Okay, if a chicken didn't lay it, what did?
It was laid by a bird that was almost a chicken, but not quite. An evolutionary predecessor?
So like a proto-chicken.
Exactly. Let's call it a proto-chicken. This proto-chicken was a fully functioning, successful bird, heavily adapted to its own environment.
Right.
But when this specific proto-chicken reproduced, the normal, tiny variations of natural selection occurred. The offspring it produced, which developed inside that specific egg, possessed a newly accumulated set of traits.
Oh, so those traits crossed the threshold.
Yes.
When that specific egg hatched, the bird that walked out had accumulated just enough morphological changes that it was functionally distinct from its parents.
Right.
It was no longer a proto-chicken, it was the very first true chicken.
Exactly. This makes perfect sense when you view it as a continuous chain.
It's like a beloved recipe passed down through generations of a family.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Let's say your great-grandmother has a traditional stew recipe. Every generation, a new cook tweaks it just a tiny bit. Someone uses a slightly different root vegetable. Someone else roasts the meat a little longer. For decades, it's still fundamentally the same family stew. But one day, a cook decides to add a completely brand new, radically powerful spice to the pot.
A significant variation that changes the fundamental profile.
Exactly. They serve it to the family, and everyone takes a bite and says, wait, this isn't the old stew anymore. This is an entirely new dish.
Ah, I see.
The egg is that very first batch made with the new spice. The cook, the proto-chicken parent, was still operating under what they thought was the old recipe, but the result they produced was something entirely new.
That is a brilliant analogy. The parent organism was not the new species, but the offspring it generated,
Right.
which began its existence as the egg was.
Right.
Therefore, by the strict mechanics of speciation, the egg must predate the chicken.
It's all about recognizing that speciation isn't an event that happens to an adult animal. It's a boundary cross between generations.
Very well said.
But, talking about this incredibly slow chain of variations and tracing our lineages back leads me to another classic question.
Oh.
One you hear constantly from skeptics who try to poke holes in this whole process.
I have a very strong feeling I know exactly what question you're about to ask.
I have to ask it. It is the ultimate cliffhanger for any discussion on evolutionary timelines.
All right, let's hear it.
If humans evolved from monkeys, why haven't the monkeys evolved?
Ah, yes. The famous monkey question.
Why are they still just swinging around in the canopy while we are down here driving luxury retro radio cars and building complex civilizations? Come on, break down the mechanics for us.
I am absolutely, categorically not going to answer that question for you today.
Wait, really? You're just going to leave us hanging?
I am, because Dr. Ramesh addresses this exact specific question in his original video.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Nope. And the way he maps out the divergent branches of the primate family tree is so elegant and so fascinating that I flat out refuse to spoil it. If you are sitting there listening and you want to finally know why monkeys are still monkeys, you are going to have to go watch the original AIML Astrology video. Consider it your mandatory homework for this deep dive.
That is ruthless, but entirely fair. I highly recommend you all go track it down because understanding that divergence completely changes how you view our place in the natural world.
It really does.
Well, looking out the windshield, I can see our driveway approaching in the distance, which means it is time to bring our luxury audio car safely back to a stop.
It has been an incredibly dense and rewarding journey today.
It really has. We've navigated the fragile, laterally dependent root systems of the Amazon, the volatile thermal dynamics of the Pacific Ocean,
The sobering reality of our own autoimmune destruction.
and of course, the slow, methodical triumph of the first chicken egg.
Quite the itinerary.
It really forces you to view our place in the world through a stark mechanical perspective. Before we turn the key and cut the engine, we want to reiterate our massive thanks to Dr. Ramesh and the AIML Astrology channel.
Truly. The depth of research and the unique interconnected framing of these global biological issues provided the entire foundation for our drive today.
It is deeply important work, and it is a privilege to be able to translate and share these insights.
Absolutely.